Good evening, everyone. My name is Juhi Garg, and I'm leading Shakti, one of the most beautiful and empowering initiatives of University of Petroleum Energy Studies, in which I strongly believe. UPS has declared year 2020 as the year of women empowerment and launched Project Shakti, an initiative to accelerate gender equality, an empowering journey from the classroom to the boardroom. Shakti focuses upon leadership development program to our own women leaders and women of the other institutions and universities. Gender sensitization programs for students and staff, CSR initiatives for underprivileged girls and women. We also offer 25% scholarship on the tuition fee for girls who are taking admission this year. So I'm sure you would all agree that in this journey, a few people can become guiding light and a source of inspiration for all of us. And such luminaries today we have amongst us an amazing human being, a celebrated author, and the most powerful women in the business, Miss Apurva Purohit. Apurva Purohit is the president of Jagran Group, one of the India's largest multimedia conglomerates. With over 3 decades of experience in media and entertainment industry, she currently manages a diverse portfolio, which includes print, radio, digital, and outdoor. Apurva has worked with marquee organizations like Zee Telefilms, Times of India, partnered with private equity players like True North, which is one of the oldest private equity firm in India. Over the years, Apurva has won multiple business awards and has been named as one of the most powerful business in India, as per a Times of India group and as per Fortune India for past 3 consecutive years. She is also a director on board for several for-profit and non-for-profit organizations. Apurva is leading voice advocating gender diversity in Indian business landscape and has authored national bestseller, my personal favorite also, women book titled You Are Not a Man. It's a beautiful book. You must all buy and read it. In her recently launched book, Lady You're the Boss, Apurva aims to empower women and encourage them to achieve their full potential. Apurva holds a bachelor's degree in physics and completed her PGDM from IIM Bangalore. To begin the talk with, I mean, it's a question which we would all want to know. How was your journey from the classroom to the boardroom?
Thank you, Dr. Garg, for inviting me. It's a pleasure. So glad to so many lovely women. Okay, so I think I had a very normal upbringing, very similar to what all the girls who are listening to me have gone through. So my father was a government servant. In fact, he was in ONGC for his entire life. So that is a petroleum connection in that sense. And as a consequence of that, we lived in different parts of the country. I think I was very fortunate because it was like an army background. So you moved from ONGC colony to ONGC colony to in different, and got to interact with a lot of different cultures. So I stayed in Chennai and Ahmedabad and Bombay and Assam, etc. And I did my graduation. I was in Chennai at that time, and from Stella Maris, which is one of the better known colleges in the country. Did my management from IIM Bangalore, and was fortunate enough to receive a pre-placement offer to get into advertising, which was something, you know, it was a mix of creative and managerial, something that I enjoyed. So working with the creative part of the world as well as with the managerial function. And worked for around 10, 12 years in advertising. Then I got an opportunity to head Zee TV. And I grabbed that opportunity, was the president of Zee TV, was the youngest CEO of my batch from IIM Bangalore. I was the youngest CEO. So I became the head of an organization, a large organization. Then I was, I think, 34 or 35. And then I moved to Times of India. I set up their television network for them. So set up Zoom, TV, Times Now, etc. Then got a chance to work with a private equity fund who had invested in Radio City. And what it did, it moved me from just being a professional manager to a quasi entrepreneur, because private equity funds, they buy organized companies and then they want somebody to run it. So I ran Radio City. We set up 30 stations across the country. Then we exited. So private equity, the fund exited the business. We sold it to the Jagran Group. And at that stage, Jagran told me that, why don't you run our other businesses for us? So currently I run Radio City. I also run Midday, which is a large, which is a group of publications in Bombay. iNext, which is a paper in the north, the activation business, the digital business. So there's a fair amount of diversity in what I do. And really that's been my journey in the last 30 years.
How was you when you were a student in the college? I mean, what kind of student you were in the college? Were you a topper? Because this is one of the questions which often my students ask me. It's a frequently asked question. That, ma'am, is it important to be a topper to remain at the top or to get at the top?
Okay, so as a student, I'm afraid to say yes, I was a topper, in the sense that I in my school and my college, I was a little bit of a nerd, so very much caught into reading and books, and not a big social animal. So a lot of so I was a nerd, I was a topper. But to answer your specific question, no, I don't think it is necessary to be a topper at all. However, I think what we learn, and we don't realize that's what we learn out of our school and college experience, is two things. One is the discipline that is required to work and study hard in order to do the best we can. So I think that, and the hard work. So being a topper is not important. However, hard work is a part of our lives, and never in our lives, whether you are my age and you are the president of a company or you're a college graduate, never will you be able to walk out of this concept of hard work. And I realize that the people who ultimately become toppers in life, which is, I think, more important than being a topper in school or college, are people who have worked hard and who have not given up. And if working hard and not giving up in school and college helps you become a topper, good for you. If you are not a topper but you have not given up, that also is good.
So it is more about perseverance and grit.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wonderful, wonderful. So your journey was amazing, and it's, ONGC kids are more like army kids. They travel and they see world and different cities, and they grow up in different cultures, which is really interesting. So it was quite a journey, I must say. And so on the basis of this, you must have met a lot of strange people and strangers. So they must have given you different kind of experience, some good and some bad. Most of them, what we experience as women, are difficult experiences. So how you could manage to deal with them, those comments, those remarks, those push kind of a thing. So how you could manage to deal with those things?
So I think if you are whether you're a man or a woman, whatever you are, you will meet a mix of people and you will have a very different types of experiences. I think one big constant learning in with myself and what I've done throughout is I've always thought that the people you meet, either they are a blessing for you or they are a lesson for you. Whatever experiences you get, either they are blessings or they are lessons. So even the worst of experiences, worst of people, there are lessons to be learned from them. So, when you look at, let us say, people who are at the juncture that I am, many young girls will say, oh, she must have had it so easy, or she must have had some special opportunities, she must have had some special mentorship, that is why she was able to do what she could. But the reality is that the experiences that I have, or the experiences a lesser successful woman has, or experiences that someone who has not been able to achieve her dreams, they have been absolutely the same experiences. All of us have had issues with bad bosses. So in the beginning of my career, I had a terrible boss. And I remember that every day I used to go to work, every day I used to come back, I used to cry. So I had actually become a crybaby throughout that 2 years that I worked with her. And she used to enter the room, In fact, the moment I heard that I was going to get assigned to work with her, I started crying. Okay, and I look back at myself and I laugh at how silly I was. But I have worked with very tough bosses. I've worked in situations where we've had, I mean, the current situation that we are handling right now, the COVID crisis, it's very difficult for leaders, because on the one hand you have to think about your people, you have to think about their health, you have to think about their safety. On the other hand, you have to think about the business. If the people don't come to work, how will the business run? And if the business doesn't run, they will lose their job. So am I supposed to be thought to be a cruel boss if I'm asking people to work? But I also know that if I don't ask them to come, tomorrow the same people will lose their jobs. So all of us have, at whichever stage of life, there are tough situations and tough people and tough experiences we have to deal with. So as I said, the first way to handle all this is to say, koi baat nahi. Either this is a blessing. So there are moments when you'll have great bosses, great colleagues, great organizations, everything is in a growth path, or there are lessons, as is this crisis, or as was my first boss. And what can I learn out of this lesson? I think that is the important thing to keep in mind. The second thing, doctor, to keep in mind is that, and this I speak about to young girls and to women who are trying to figure out what they want to do. And that is that I see a lot of smart girls, right? I speak at a lot of institutes and a lot of colleges and a lot of places where I interact with 21-year-olds and 23-year-olds, etc. I see that when they are till the stage that they pass out and the first 2-3 years of their work life, they are very driven, they are very hardworking. They say, as you asked, topper, they are toppers, they want to be toppers, even when they're very competitive, very ambitious. Unfortunately, after 3-4 years, this ambition goes down somewhere. And I recognize that this goes down because in their mind, society is putting this pressure on them, and they are also dealing with this pressure of saying, either I can have a successful family or a successful career. It's never and. And then I see that they lose their cutting edge. In the first decade of working, 50% of the women who join leave.
True.
When I will talk to your girls and your students, if I say that, out of 100 of you, 30 years later, only 5 of you will be working, they don't believe me. But it is a fact, 95% of women who enter the workforce drop out. And that point one has to change. And for that, the recognition has to be, it's not either or. For me, it is an and. Because the single most important goal has to be financial independence. Why should I ask my father for money? Why should I ask my husband for money? Why should I ask my son for money? I will earn for myself. And if that realization is there, I think our girls will be able to deal with whatever challenge that comes in front of them.
Beautiful. It's beautifully explained. And I think I did mention about this wonderful female, the first boss of yours in the book. I think you mentioned about her.
Yes, yes, I have.
And the interesting incidences wherein the project has to be submitted next day, and
correct.
Beautiful anecdotes in your book. So this reminds me of a beautiful quote by Robert Stevenson, who said, "There are no foreign lands. It is the traveler who is foreign." What's your view on this? Do you think one who envisions is already there? Is there any key to be a great visionary?
So I think there are two parts to your question. One part is the quote where you're saying there are no foreign lands, only travelers who are foreign. And the other part is the bit about the vision. Now, if I take the first part where where you make this very valid point that there are no foreign lands, there are only travelers who are foreign. The interpretation of that quote for me is as follows. A, that when they say travelers are the travelers who are foreign, I think the message here is that there is a learning opportunity wherever you go. You sit in your house, there's a learning opportunity. You go to Europe, there's a learning opportunity. You go to Vellore, there's a learning opportunity. You go to Dehradun, there's a learning opportunity. So for us, the traveler who has come there is foreign. And what is a foreigner have to do? He has to learn the way of the native. So the message here for me and for all the young girls around talking to us is that when you build your career and when you change a job, don't change it for a designation, don't change it for a title, don't change it for more money. Change it because you're getting more learning there. And I think through my life, whatever I have done, I have always looked for opportunities to learn. Is this project going to give me something new to do? Is this job going to give me some learning? Is this interaction going to help me in becoming a better version of myself? And, you know, I'm 31. I was telling my team today that after working so hard, I should take it easy and say, you know, bahut ho gaya. But even now, I have a zest to learn. And I think if you keep that in mind, never will you stagnate. Never will you stagnate. I think that's the message out of this. Every traveler is foreign. The other message out of this is that, you know, we believe that, oh my God, this is happening only to me. Life is unfair only to me. Only I have a lazy husband. Only I have an evil mother-in-law. The fact is, all women go through the same kinds of issues. I have not heard of any woman who says, no, my husband is not lazy. Right? So I think we have to understand that what all of us are going through is very, very similar. And the moment we realize that, we will draw strength. So in my second book, I have talked about this. So I have had one mentee. So she would come to me once a month. I would give her guidance, and she was doing a good job. She was taking the feedback from me, but she was not really exact. Then one day she called me up late in the night. There was some crisis in her office. And I told her, listen, I'll speak to you tomorrow. I'm washing vessels. So next time she meets me, she says, ma'am, you are washing vessels. So I said, yeah, I also have issues. My maid didn't come. So I was washing vessels. I thought that, you know, when I look at you, you're the head of a company, you're the president, and you are washing. Suddenly something happened in my mind, in her mind, and she started empathizing with what I was saying. And I saw an improvement in her own demeanor. And because now she's feeling that, oh, this is a person who's talking to me, who's gone through exactly the same issues. And therefore she was more receptive to what I was saying. It was not one guru giving gyan, right? I'm not sitting on top of an ivory tower and telling people what to do. I have gone through exactly the same problems that everybody's gone through. I think the moment we recognize that, we'll be more receptive to what our seniors around us are saying. Plus, we'll feel very emboldened. Okay, she also has a lazy husband. She also has to wash vessels. So if she can become president, so can I.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the better, you know, the more gracefully we accept things, the
Yes.
sooner we become the part of the journey.
That's the vision. That is when you talk about visioning, what do we vision? So people think in a very blinkered manner that vision is coming out with a new innovative iPhone or coming out with one. But vision, according to me, is how do you lead your life? And as one of my favorite quotes is, how you lead your life is ultimately how you lead every day.
Absolutely. How beautiful.
How beautiful. Life is not about something that will happen to us when our vision comes true. Life is what you and I are doing today, tomorrow, day after, at work, at office, in the bus. That is life. And how you lead that life is finally how you will be as a visionary.
Absolutely. So beautifully explained. And it's all about how we perceive things. You know, somebody explained me about this, that, you know, how we see a 3D movie. You know, it's the complete effect from all over. And we actually perceive things from here to there. So it's all about that. Visioning is all about this. It's a beautiful explanation. Okay, so to cruise ahead in this journey towards self-transformation. Apurva, what to pack and what to unpack? What are the qualities and skills which you feel that that's going to take these girls to the boardroom? What have you packed actually in your baggage?
Okay. So I think two things I would like to mention here. One bit is that, you know, when we pass out, when we start with our first job, when we are looking for our job, when we are looking for the next promotion, we are very caught up in wanting to make a CV. So how will my, okay, have I passed out of the Premier Institute? Then was I a topper? Did I also play cricket for my school team? Was I the captain of my school team? Did my first job, then my vice president, then senior vice president. So we are too caught up in building a CV. Actually, the more important thing is building a reputation, which is very different from building a CV. See, CV, when I see the CVs of young people, half of the CVs are people they have exaggerated, right? So CVs, you can rub it out. You can say always, everybody I know is a topper. Everybody I know has been the captain of the cricket team, right? So the CV is something you can erase and rewrite. Reputations you can't. So when the corner office becomes available, when there are people who are looking at you that should I make Apurva the CEO or should I make Juhi the CEO or should I make somebody else the CEO, at that time they don't look at your CV because everybody's CV is very good. What they do is they talk to people and ask, what is the reputation of Apurva? What is the reputation of Juhi? And if the reputation says, oh, Apurva, she's very tough as a boss, but I learned a lot from her. She's very tough as a boss, but she's fair. This I cannot write in my CV. This is how I behaved. What is the reputation
Virtues.
I was building today also? What is the reputation I'm building with all of you? Suppose I came late. Suppose I was distracted. Suppose I'm reading on my phone. What will you think of me? She has a good CV, but she was not very involved or not engaged with us. That is reputation building or reputation marring that is happening, right? So every point we have to remember this, wherever, whatever job we are doing, there are reputations that are getting built. So, there is a beautiful song which I like very much, which says that aane wala pal jaane wala hai. That has that line, एक बार वक्त से लम्हा गिरा कहीं, वहां दास्ता बनी लम्हा कहीं नहीं. So what Gulzar is saying that lamha is making a dastan. That moment is creating a story. So what all the moments of your life will create your reputation. Are we thinking about that? I think that is very important if you want to reach the boardroom. I, for example, after I passed out, I have never made my resume. All my jobs I got because someone recommended me. All my jobs. I've never ever made a CV.
Wow.
Will you be able to say that about yourself?
Wow. That's amazing. Huge. That's really brilliant. So it's more about value system, your own values, your virtues that you carry with you. That speaks about you.
Correct.
So beautiful, wonderful. So one more question, which is highly connected to this. As a young woman, when they, they play a very significant role for the society, but seldom they derail from the path. They forget what is their responsibility for the family, for the institution, for the community. They derail kind of, and this by this, the personality, the whole charisma of their personality blurs, and something happens which is wrong. So what are you going to suggest to these girls to come back to the line and carry on things in a better way? What are those tricks and
So,
traits of those?
Being a woman is not easy. And being a working woman is certainly not easy. Because I think men 100% devote their time, energy, effort to their career. Women whether we like it or not, we have many social responsibilities, right? We have to be a good professional also, we have to be a good wife also, we have to be a good mother also, a good daughter-in-law also, good sister also. So the pressures on a woman are far higher. Equally, she is the primary nurturer when she has a kid, right? She cannot walk away from that responsibility. She's the one who will give birth to a child. She's the one who will feed the child. So the first 2-3 years, the mother role only she can do, right? Now what this does is this puts a lot of pressure on women. Additionally, if she doesn't fulfill, or if she is remiss in, she's not a good cook, or for some reason her kid is ill, there will be 1,000 people who will be passing comments. Oh, काम करती है ना इसीलिए बच्चा बेचारा, काम करती है ना इसलिए घर का कौन ध्यान रखेगा, ऑफिस क्यों जाती हो, घर पे रहो ना. So these kind of comments she has to, and therefore she internally she is trying to be as perfect as possible because she doesn't want to listen to this criticism. So my first message to the young girls is that, first of all, don't try to be perfect. You cannot be. It will unnecessarily put too much stress on you. Don't try. So for example, I'm a horrendous cook. It doesn't bother. I don't know. If I try to boil an egg also, it will burn. But that's okay. I don't feel bad about it. I delegate it to somebody. Okay. So no, don't worry about trying to be perfect. Don't worry about trying to always, oh my God, ye kya keh raha hai mere ko, ye mere ko, what will they say? What will my neighbor say? What will my mother say? What will my husband say? What will my boss say? We spend so much time trying to live up to the expectations of others that we are never able to fulfill our own expectations. Okay. So how do we deal with that? I think you have to be authentic and true to yourself. And the age that all the girls who are listening to this are at is the right age to hold on. At this age, you don't have currently the baggage of being wife, mother, daughter-in-law, etc. What are you as an individual? What are your strengths? What are your hobbies? What do you like? What do you dislike? Hold that on. Don't let it disappear under this pressure of other people's expectations. Because later on, you will regret it. So in my second book, I have quoted this lovely anecdote. So when my mother has been a big influence in my life. So when I wrote the first, I dedicated it to her. So when she got the book, she called me up and said, "Okay, I've got Lady You're Not a Man copy. I thought you were dedicating it to me." I said, "Of course, on the first page, it's written to Mummy." So she said that, "To Mummy? Where is my name?" And then I realized that, women just become mummy, wife, daughter-in-law of the nasty Mrs. Bhatia in 402, Behen, that they are Pushpa, Pooja, Juhi. People forget. Vivek ki mummy, Mrs. Sharma, Mrs. Bhatia ki strange daughter-in-law. That's how they get defined, right? Because that role becomes more than what they stand for. So in the second book, I've written, "To Asha Kanwar, my mother," so that, her name should be recognized. I thought that was a very important perspective.
Very important perspective. We do so many roles in our life, and sometimes some roles become, synonym of our names.
Exactly.
So that's so beautiful. So while I was researching on you, I found in one of your interviews, you defined power equation. So like how people define you, the most powerful women in business, who empower others. So what is the equation of power in your perspective? And you also gave another interesting mantra of success as 3 P's. So what is that mantra? In fact, we would all like to know.
So power, as I've always said, that what is the point of having power if you are not able to empower others? What will you do with that power? Tell me. So if I can, through the power that I have, it can empower other women or empower other men or empower the younger generation or help them become more courageous, wiser because of the experiences that I've already gone through. That is true power, right? The power to influence and the power to change somebody's life for the better. I think that is the definition of power. It is not a intrinsic thing, oh, I'm so great, I'm so great. I think the other thing, that the point that the 3 Ps, which I've often talked about and which according to me define success for anybody. The first one is perseverance. I think I've talked about perseverance repeatedly, and I feel the toppers in life, people who succeed, the sales guys who always do their targets, the women who are successful both in at home and work, are the people who don't give up. Come what may, they persevere, persevere, persevere. Just like that little ant who we learnt about in school, that poem that we all learnt about. Na? नन्ही चींटी जब दाना लेकर चढ़ती है, चढ़ती दीवारों से 100 बार फिसलती है. मन का विश्वास रगों में साहस भरता है, चढ़कर गिरना गिरकर चढ़ना ना अखरता है. आखिर उसकी मेहनत बेकार नहीं होती, कोशिश करने वाले की हार नहीं होती. I think this, I have always found people who have succeeded follow this mantra. Whatever happens, they don't give up. That's my first P. The second P is a positive mindset. And again, just today I was telling my team this, that COVID has come, there's such a big crisis, we are not able to generate revenues. But if you are going to sit with a loser mentality, okay, kuch nahi hone wala hai, then your message is that kuch nahi hone wala hai, to koshish bhi nahi karoge. But if so the game is first in your mind, before you even go out in the field, before you even go out to play a match. If in your mind you have lost the game, you will lose the match also. So first you have to say, I can do it. I can succeed. So that positive mindset is very important for the brain to send you messages on how to succeed. If you keep on telling your brain, kuch nahi hone wala hai, kuch nahi hone wala hai, sachi muchi kuch nahi hoga. The third thing is personal accountability, the third P. And that I talk about often because that's the final leadership trait. So they say that when a kid is small and he loses a ball, he comes to his mother and says, ball kho gaya. So the ball has got lost on its own. He's not responsible. So the mother then buys him a ball and then he's happy. When he grows up a bit, second time he goes, now this time he comes back when he's older, he says, मुझसे बॉल खो गया. Now he's accepting responsibility कि मैंने कुछ किया, that's why I lost the ball. बॉल खो गया versus मुझसे बॉल खो गया. And the moment he does that, he's crying also. But equally, it's a very positive message to the brain, which is saying कि तुमसे खोया ना, so do something. अगर यूनिवर्स ने बॉल खो दिया तो यूनिवर्स will only come and do something. पर तुमने खोया तो तुम कुछ करोगे ना. So if you accept accountability कि मेरी वजह से मैं पास हुई या फेल हुई, then you will try to do something to pass. No, मैं क्या करती, my teacher only is unfair to me. मैं क्या करती, I am unlucky. मैं क्या करती, उस दिन मैंने अपनी lucky ring पहन के नहीं गई थी क्लास का एग्जाम देने. तो then you are not going to solve your problems. Similarly at work also, I could have done better, but my boss doesn't like me. Bosses don't care. They are not here to like or dislike you. You do good work, you will get a promotion. You do bad work, you won't get a promotion. So no point externalizing and blaming the system. And even with young women or women, I see this. Women who have succeeded said, I'm responsible for my career. Women who have failed said, oh, मैं क्या करती, मेरी सास ने मुझे काम करने नहीं दिया. मैं क्या करती, मेरा husband ने मना कर दिया. Then you'll never know. You have externalized all your problems. So personal accountability, you take responsibility for your actions, then you will succeed.
Wow. It's so beautiful. So perseverance and how you attribute your success and failure, which is very important, and the mindset, positive mindset. So this is lovely. And another beautiful talk beautiful thing you write in your books. You talk about imposter syndrome, which actually pulls any women back in the journey. So what's that imposter syndrome?
So actually, what has happened to women in patriarchal societies such as ours, that from childhood only they are always being treated as if they're not wanted. We still have houses which say कि वो लड़का नहीं हुआ लड़की हुई, वो लड़की तो बोझ है. So these kind of subconscious messages have been there throughout society. So when women grow up, imagine if they've been always taught to be unwanted, not needed, the extra child, the one who should quickly get more married because she's baggage to me. They grow up with this sense of insecurity in them. And even if they do well, even if they do well, in their heart, they believe they don't attribute the success to themselves. They never say, I did well because I'm so great, I'm so talented, I'm so bright. They will always say, oh, I did well, I was lucky. I did well because someone else supported me. So that is the imposter that is sitting in all of us, which is never saying that I'm good because I'm good. It's always saying that, okay, you did well, but it's not because of your talent. You just happen to be lucky. So I remember I felt that when I got into IIM Bangalore. Now, how many people get into IIMs, right? Despite having passed, got through the IIM, for the whole first year, I thought by fluke I have got through. Despite the fact that I'd been a topper all my life, by fluke. I never said, oh, I'm damn bright, yeah, I got into IIM. So that keeps on eroding your confidence. And again, I keep on telling all girls, young or old, because everybody suffers from this imposter syndrome, that accept that it was your skill and talent and hard work that got you where you are.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I think really we all suffer from this imposter syndrome. We don't attribute our success to ourselves. There's a lot of question on self-confidence. So in your first book, which is Lady, You're Not a Man, in chapter 4, I love the way you end your chapters with corporate mantra. So I'm reading one of the corporate mantras from chapter 4, which says, women are born with multitasking gene embedded in them, whereas men don't understand that concept at all. Multitasking is a unique skill which mostly women have, and we should use it to the fullest capacity to move ahead in the race. Therefore, never walk away accepting an additional project at work, and definitely take up a home improvement task you've been planning alongside. It will only hone your skills for better. Doing 23 things at the same time, it's child's play for you. But make a big deal out of it and make sure that you get your share of compliments for being so organized and efficient. So I really loved this portion from your book, and I love the mantras, all the mantras. But from you, I would like to know which is your favorite anecdote or mantra from your book.
So again, I mean, every part of the first and the second book I have written through personal experiences I've seen other women have around me, and try to draw lessons for them so that the younger girls who come after us can learn. They don't have to go through this whole experience themselves. In my second book, I won't read it, but one of my favorite stories is this thing about strengths, not weaknesses. Okay. So I remember when I was young, I was 16, 17, and then at 16, 17, you're so super conscious about everything. I remember going for a cousin's wedding and I had a sty in my eye. And that sty was just a boil. But for me, the whole wedding got spoiled because of that one sty. And I said, my God, I'm looking so horrible. And whenever I would see myself in the mirror, I would only be able to see that sty. And then I said, my God. And at that age, you're also conscious of how are the boys looking at you or not looking. I said, my God, nobody's looking at me because I'm so ugly. I've got that sty. I've got that sty. I've got that sty. Now, I know that when you're teenagers, this small things bother you. Everything seems exaggerated. But I think women never grow out of this. So even when they are 30 and they're 40, they will be concentrating on their weaknesses and not their strengths. So if I talk to one of my women managers and she'll do a good presentation, I'll say, well done. She'll say, no, but I didn't say this correctly. And so she'll only be pointing out flaws. If I ask one of my male colleagues, same thing, I'll tell him, well done on a presentation. Yeah, I'm so great. I thought of that present. Didn't I do a fabulous job? Yeah. So they're so full of themselves and praising themselves and only talking about how good they are. Whereas women are only talking about how bad they are, including not accepting compliments. If I tell you that sari is looking very nice, this is an old one, old sari only. never say, yes, I'm looking nice in this sari. So I think that is, in different ways, that takes away from what we are as individuals. And it takes away from other people seeing us as confident professionals. Because we are only for pointing out our flaws, no, all the time. Oh, my style, oh, my style, oh, my style. Versus, oh my God, I've got beautiful eyes.
So beautiful. So beautiful. I think can we pick up few questions from the audience? I can see a lot of audience, and I request my colleague and friend Nupu to help me identify a few good questions. Okay. So here goes. Give me a second. Okay. How has the pandemic impacted print media? How will they recover? So it is all about your business, but yeah, interesting one.
Frankly, the pandemic hasn't impacted the publishing and the output of print or of any other media. So except for certain pockets where the subscriptions had gone down because there was a lockdown. Apart from that, I think most publications are back to around 85-90% of their original sales. So in that sense, momentarily it impacted. After that, it was okay. Even in reach and time spent with all media, actually the pandemic has ensured people are spending more time because everybody wants information, news, etc. So there's 20 minutes more being spent with print, 30 minutes more being spent with radio, 40 minutes more being spent with television. So people are spending more time with media. As far as print is concerned, a very positive thing that's happened is that finally people are recognizing that authentic information they will get from print only. Credible, fact-checked information is not easily available on digital because you don't know what is true, what is not. We know what has happened to television anchors who are just screaming and shouting all the time. So they are going to print to get authentic information. And I think that's a very positive step.
Absolutely.
Of course, negatively, the economy being in a slowdown has impacted everybody. So whether it is a KFC outlet or whether it is a FMCG product or whether it is print, currently revenues are under pressure because the economy is in a slowdown.
Absolutely. So there's another very interesting question I can see. Sometimes you get stuck in your own image. How do you refine your own self after a certain point in time?
Well, a very good question. Very good question. So absolutely right. People, especially women, get stagnate into what they think they are. Okay. So they box themselves into stereotypes. Oh, I'm good at ABC, but I'm not very good at ABC. So, and this becomes a self-limiting behavior. The more you say, I'm not good at math, or I'm not good at driving, or I'm not, the more you will not be good at it. So all of us box ourselves into stereotypes. I think the only way to get out of stereotyping ourselves is, as I said, to ask yourself and to actually have a roadmap of what you learned in 2019 versus 2018. Were you a different person? Did you learn something new? Did you become better at something? Did you improve yourself on something? And in 2020, were you different from what you were at 2019? I think we should not hold on to what we were when we were 16 or 18 or 30. As they say, the Buddhist saying is na, that every time you go to the river, you are a new person. You are never the same person who crossed the river once, right? Because the river has flowed and you have also flowed on. You have to accept that.
Okay, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So there's an interesting question, which is by 3-4 people, which is raised by 3-4 people. So how do you help your team to deal with the politics in the office?
Politics.
Yeah.
Okay, so as a manager and a leader, I will say that we work very hard to ensure that the culture of the organization is not a political culture. Now, what causes politics? Politics is typically caused when there is a lack of transparency, Because when you show favoritism, you are fair to somebody, unfair to somebody. And the third thing is that you in your behavior and demeanor, you show that you like somebody and you don't like. The moment these three things happen, politics automatically gets created. So the first thing the leader and manager should do is to work at very hard at being fair. And the only way you can be fair is by not all decisions that you make are based on some policy that you have created. They are not decisions that you make. So can I come late? Can I not come late? Whatever the policy says. If I decide, then I'm a human. No, sometimes I'll say, okay, I'm fond of somebody, I'll allow them to come late. I'm not fond of somebody else. It's just as teachers grade. No, if you have in objective questions, if you've got 8 out of 10, you have got 8 out of 10. Just because I like you, I can't give you 9 out of 10. No. So how did you do that? By objectively creating a way of measuring somebody. So I think the more objective you become in measuring somebody's performance, the more quantitative you are in measuring, in evaluating people, and the more you remove decisions from you as a person to more of a policy-led decision, you will 80% of the politics you will remove.
So there's a question which says that you are at the top position, you're managing such a stressful business, and in COVID situation, it is even more stressful because businesses usually are not doing well. So how do you deal with the stress?
So you are absolutely right. I think up and down the pyramid, everybody is going through different types of stresses. Nobody's having it easy right now. As I said right in the beginning, I'm equally worried about my team's health. Equally, I'm worried about the business. And sometimes these are contrary positions to take. How do I deal with it? I think the way to deal with it is to do a lot of self-care. So whether it is relying on meditation, whether it is relying on, having something that calms you down, like I concentrate a lot on my health, exercise, eating properly. So self-care, both physically and mentally, I think is the only way that you can deal with any stress.
So stress anyhow is basically when absence of pleasure is there, that is known as a stress. So often some philosophical books talk about it. So there's another interesting question which says that does media give false ideas and fantasies based on perfect picture of the society? Is it true? And what is your say on that?
One part I'll tell you is that media, actually, we can't say media creates an image and everybody wants to live up to that image. Media is actually a mirror of society. So whatever you see in society is reflected in media. That's the first part. So if media, if everybody is stressed, media will portray the stress. If everybody is having a good time, media will portray that. Having said that, of course, there are some unethical media players who will sensationalize, exaggerate, etc., which is very, very harmful. This reminds me of, when I was running Zee TV, a lot of people would come and tell me, why do you show these serials like Kyunki Saas and those kind of serials which are not, which are perpetuating certain myths? You are actually doing disservice. So my answer would be, if you don't like to watch these Kyunki Saas serials, you have something very powerful in your hand, a remote, switch it off. No. So I, in my idealistic state, I tried to do a very modern serial, which was, I still remember, it was called Astitva, which was this lady who was, married a younger guy. She was a doctor. She was, and then they get divorced. So it showed a modern woman and how she's dealing with working woman, etc., etc. That got a lot of awards, but never did well in ratings. So as a business that I'm running, should I do Kyunki Saas, which gets so much ratings, or should I do Astitva, which wins a lot of awards but doesn't get ratings? Now, is this my desire? My desire was to make Astitva, no? But everybody wanted to watch Kyunki Saas. So I think, so media reflects what your likes and dislikes are.
Absolutely. So I'm going to raise this last question. However, there are a lot of questions popping up, but this seems a question. This seems an interesting question. Often, women are easy targets for male bosses to vent up their anger for their own hiccups in particular project. What is your advice on the same?
See, women become easy targets when we play the victim card. I've never been, I was also a management trainee once. I was also a junior executive. I also had male bosses, bad ones, good ones. So nobody took advantage of me by giving me bad projects or troubling me, etc. Because I never allowed them to do it. So it is what you allow, right? If you behave that, I'm a great professional, I'm confident, I'm not going to take any nonsense from anybody, nobody will give you nonsense. But if you are playing the victim guy, main bechari, mere paas to sab, then people will take advantage. No, how you present yourself will determine how other people treat you.
It's all about self-victimization. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we understand and we respect your time, how precious it is. It's 5:59, and I'm sorry, audience, I won't be able to take more questions on this. So my last word to you is thanks. It was an enlightening session, Apurva. Thank you so much from the team UPS for Shakti for accepting our invite and sparing your valuable time for this talk. It was a complete delight to have you with us this evening. Thank you so much.